The sky above the battle-scarred planet shimmered with the glow of exploding starships, their destruction sending ripples of light across the vastness of space. The Talon's Fury, humanity's most advanced warship, danced through the debris field, dodging barrages of plasma fire from the Aegis, the Carvian flagship. The two colossal ships moved like predators in a deadly waltz, their crews locked in a final, desperate struggle for survival. Inside the Talon's Fury, Captain Alara Dax gripped the helm, her knuckles white from the strain. The hum of the starboard engines reverberated through the bridge as a hail of enemy fire pounded against their shields. "Evasive maneuvers now," she commanded, her voice cold with determination. A brilliant flash filled the cockpit as another blast hit the shields. The ship rocked violently, and alarms blared. This wasn't just a battle. It was the decisive moment for humanity. Every strategy, every sacrifice, every innovation had led to this clash. The galaxy's future hung in the balance, and as Ilara's heart pounded in her chest, she knew one thing for certain. The enemy had underestimated humanity's will to survive. The galaxy, once a place of vast wonder and uncharted mysteries, had become a brutal arena for war. Stretching across hundreds of light years, it was home to dozens of advanced civilizations, each with its own unique history, technology, and culture. But for all the diversity, the galaxy had never seen conflict on the scale it now endured. At the heart of the war was humanity, a species that had once been considered insignificant in the eyes of the greater galactic empires. Their primitive beginnings on Earth had not inspired much concern from the more powerful species. However, that perception quickly changed when the Carvian Empire, a technologically superior and ruthless race, declared war on humanity. Their fleet, an array of ships armed with quantum weapons and cloaking technology, swept across human space, crushing colonies and militaries with terrifying ease. The Carvians were a proud species, their empire stretching across numerous star systems, their fleets the envy of every other civilization. Their ships were sleek and deadly, capable of slipping through asteroid fields like shadows, their weapons powerful enough to tear apart entire planets. The Carvian fleet was led by Emperor Volkar, a leader who had grown accustomed to victory and saw humanity's rapid expansion as a threat to the galaxy's delicate balance of power. In his eyes, humans were nothing more than an inconvenience, a species too young and too weak to stand in the way of galactic conquest. Meanwhile, humanity, backed into a corner and outgunned on every front, had no choice but to evolve or perish. Despite their initial technological disadvantage, humanity's brilliance and ingenuity became their greatest asset. They adapted quickly, learning from their mistakes, engineering breakthroughs, and forging alliances with races who saw the Carvians as a threat to the galaxy as a whole. Captain Alara Dax, the commander of the Talon's Fury, embodied humanity's resilience. Once a pilot in the Earth Defense Forces, she was now a seasoned leader, a symbol of humanity's determination. She was a woman who had risen from the ashes of defeat, watching her comrades perish in the early days of the war, only to grow into one of the most brilliant tactical minds in the fleet. Under her leadership, the Talon's Fury had become a symbol of humanity's resistance. A ship born from experimental technology, it was a testament to human ingenuity. A ship capable of turning the tide against even the most formidable of foes. Opposing her was Volkar, the Carvian emperor, whose mind was as sharp as the weapons his species wielded. His empire had thrived on its ability to conquer and assimilate, leaving no room for mercy. Volkar believed that humanity's only role in the galaxy was to serve or be destroyed. His obsession with total domination was matched only by his arrogance. He underestimated humanity at every turn, believing them incapable of standing against the might of the Carvian war machine. The human alliance had been formed in the wake of humanity's initial defeats, an alliance of independent colonies, remnant military forces, and even a few allied alien species who had suffered at the hands of the Carvian Empire. These species, including the Xyloran, a race of hyper-intelligent beings with advanced psionic abilities, and the Tzark, a massive insectoid species with unparalleled strength, stood beside humanity in the fight for their survival. These unlikely allies, though varied in culture and technology, shared one common trait. They had seen the brutality of the Carvian Empire firsthand and knew that if humanity fell, they would be next. In the face of seemingly insurmountable odds, humanity fought back with unexpected brilliance. They did not have the sheer firepower of the Carvians, but they had something far more powerful: the ability to think, adapt, and outsmart their enemies. In a series of daring missions and tactical innovations, humanity had made a name for itself as a force to be reckoned with. They had invented new weapons, adapted alien technology, and used the very landscape of space to their advantage. Among their most significant achievements was the development of the phase drive, a prototype faster-than-light drive capable of slipping through dimensions, allowing ships to travel unseen by conventional sensors. It was a gamble, a technology that was as dangerous as it was powerful, and it was humanity's last hope in the war. The Talon's Fury, fitted with this experimental drive, was the spearhead of the human alliance's final push against the Carvian Empire. But the galaxy was not a place for heroes alone. Every day, battles raged across star systems, each one more desperate than the last. Humanity's fleets, once fractured and weak, had grown stronger, but they were still far from matching the Carvian war machine. Every victory was hard-won and every loss was devastating. The question on every leader's mind was whether humanity could survive long enough to turn the tide in their favor. As the war raged on, the fate of humanity hung in the balance. But as long as there was breath in their lungs and fire in their hearts, they would fight. They would fight with every tool, every weapon, and every mind at their disposal, because humanity had learned one undeniable truth. While they might not have been the strongest in the galaxy, they were the smartest. And that, more than anything else, would be their greatest weapon. The conflict between humanity and the Carvian Empire had begun as a series of skirmishes, small and almost insignificant in the grand scale of the galaxy. But as the war unfolded, the stakes grew ever higher. The Carvians, with their vast, almost overwhelming fleet and superior technology, had rapidly pushed humanity to the brink of annihilation. Earth had barely survived the initial onslaught, and humanity's colonies were falling one by one. But instead of breaking, the humans had fought back. Not with sheer firepower or brute force, but with cunning, innovation, and an unshakable will to survive. Captain Alara Dax, now commander of the Talon's Fury, knew that humanity's salvation lay in their ability to think smarter, not harder. The Talon's Fury was an experimental vessel, unlike any other ship in the human fleet. It was equipped with a phase drive, a device that allowed it to slip in and out of subspace, evading detection from even the most advanced Carvian sensors. It was their greatest weapon, but also their greatest risk. The technology was untested, unreliable, and dangerous. Yet, Alara knew that humanity had no other choice but to use it. The first real breakthrough came during a massive battle near the Verdar system, a star system that housed a critical Carvian supply depot. Alara had been tracking a Carvian fleet, outnumbered and outgunned, but she had learned the art of using space itself to her advantage. The Carvians, though technologically superior, were predictable in their strategies. They used their cloaking technology to remain unseen until they were within range, and they relied heavily on overwhelming firepower to break through human defenses. But the Talon's Fury had something the Carvians hadn't accounted for: humanity's ingenuity. Alara had devised a plan that involved using an asteroid field to hide their movements. The dense asteroid field was filled with rock fragments large enough to block any sensor emissions, allowing the ship to move unnoticed. Using the phase drive, the Talon's Fury slipped into subspace, traveling just beneath the field, emerging only long enough to launch a strike before disappearing again. For hours, the Carvian fleet had no idea where the attack was coming from. Every time they thought they had found the Talon's Fury, it was already gone, vanishing back into the subspace fold. The phase drive was unpredictable, and Alara knew that each jump could leave them vulnerable, but the results spoke for themselves. The Carvians had been forced to retreat, leaving behind a trail of wreckage and confusion. But the victory came at a steep cost. The phase drive had been pushed to its limits, the ship's systems damaged by the strain of constant use. The Carvian fleet, though temporarily defeated, was not one to be easily discouraged. They knew that humanity was learning their tactics and that time was running out. Emperor Volkar, furious at his fleet's failure, called for a counterattack that would leave no room for mercy. Weeks passed and the human alliance prepared for what they knew would be the next phase of the war. The Carvians, though wounded, had regrouped and built a new fleet, one that was larger and more advanced than anything humanity had ever seen. Their ships were faster, more durable, and packed with weapons that could obliterate even the Talon's fury in a matter of minutes. And their tactics had evolved. They no longer relied solely on brute force. They had learned from their mistakes, and now they employed advanced intelligence-gathering methods, including spies and infiltrators, among the human alliance's ranks. The next major battle occurred at the Cornus Belt, a region of space known for its dense debris fields and gravitational anomalies. The Cornus Belt was the perfect location for a decisive battle, as both sides would be forced to maneuver in tight quarters, relying on their wits and technology to gain the upper hand. Alara had been briefed on the situation and knew that this was the moment when humanity had to prove that they could stand toe-to-toe with the Carvians, not just through cunning, but with raw technological power. The human alliance had developed a new type of experimental energy shield, designed to withstand Carvian weapons, which often had the ability to bypass traditional defenses. The problem, however, was that the shields were still untested in real combat. Alara's plan was simple. Use the Talon's fury as a decoy, luring the Carvian fleet into the Cornus Belt's hazardous terrain. She knew that the Carvians, ever confident in their superior weaponry, would be more than willing to engage her head-on. Once the Carvian fleet was deep within the belt, the rest of the human alliance fleet would come in from multiple directions, using the debris fields and gravitational anomalies to their advantage. The Talon's fury jumped into position and began broadcasting false signals, making it appear as though it were vulnerable. As expected, the Carvians took the bait, rushing in to finish off what they assumed would be an easy target. What they didn't anticipate was that the Talon's fury was not alone. The human alliance ships emerged from all directions, their new energy shields activated. The Carvian fleet, caught off guard by the sudden appearance of enemy vessels, tried to maneuver, but the dense asteroid field and gravitational anomalies made evasive action nearly impossible. The human alliance fleet unleashed everything they had, their weapons firing in synchronized bursts, overwhelming Carvian ships one by one. For a time, it seemed like humanity might have the upper hand. The Carvian ships, though powerful, were not designed for such close-quarters combat. The human ships, agile and flexible, darted through the battlefield, taking advantage of every opportunity to strike. The Talon's fury was at the heart of the conflict, using its phase drive to move in and out of subspace, striking at the Carvian ships from unexpected angles. But the Carvians were not to be underestimated. As the battle raged on, Alara noticed something unusual. Several of the Carvian ships began using a new form of technology, a weapon that could destabilize the very fabric of subspace. It was a direct counter to the phase drive, designed to prevent ships from slipping in and out of subspace. It was a devastating blow to humanity's greatest advantage, and Alara realized that the Talon's fury could no longer rely on its phase drive to stay one step ahead. The battle shifted in favor of the Carvians as they pressed their advantage. The human alliance fleet began to suffer heavy losses, and even the experimental energy shields were beginning to fail under the sheer weight of Carvian firepower. Alara's heart sank as she saw the Talon's fury take a direct hit, the ship's hull shuddering as the powerful weapon tore through the shields. With every passing moment, the odds seemed to grow steeper. Humanity's fleet, though filled with bravery and resourcefulness, was outmatched by the overwhelming might of the Carvian war machine. Yet, despite the mounting casualties and failures, Alara knew that the war was far from over. They had survived this long, and humanity would not surrender so easily. The final battle for humanity's survival had arrived. The Talon's fury, battered and bruised from its previous encounters, had been driven to the very edges of the galaxy. Its once gleaming hull was now scarred with burns and punctured plating. The phase drive was offline, the experimental energy shields barely holding up against the onslaught of Carvian firepower. Yet it was still operational, and under Captain Ilara Dax's leadership, humanity had one final hope. Emperor Volkar, the ruthless leader of the Carvian Empire, had launched his last assault, an all-out galaxy-shattering invasion. His fleet was vast, far larger than any force humanity had ever faced. The Carvians had been relentless in their pursuit, and they had captured key systems, neutralizing humanity's last bastion of resistance. Earth, a shattered remnant of its former self, had fallen to the Carvian war machine. But humanity still fought, not because they believed they could win, but because they knew they had nothing left to lose. The Verdar system was the site of the final confrontation, a once thriving planetary system now caught in the crossfire of an interstellar war. A massive Carvian armada, thousands of ships strong, hovered above the remains of its main planet, ready to deliver the final blow. To humanity's rebellion, the Human Alliance fleet, though vastly outnumbered, was positioned in the system's outer regions, waiting for the right moment to strike. Ilara stood on the bridge of the Talon's Fury, her hands gripping the command chair as she studied the tactical display. The Carvian fleet was moving in close formation, a massive wall of ships advancing slowly, methodically. Their sheer size and firepower were overwhelming, but Ilara had seen this before. She knew the key to defeating the Carvians wasn't in brute strength. It was in exploiting their overconfidence. The humans had one last card to play. For weeks they had been working on a secret weapon, a device that could turn the tide of the war. The Hypernova device was a prototype weapon capable of harnessing the power of a collapsing star and unleashing its energy in a concentrated blast. It was still in the testing phase, and its mechanics were untested in real combat. But desperation had driven humanity to take the risk. If they could deploy the device within the heart of the Carvian fleet, it would obliterate their ships and cripple the entire invasion force. Ilara's pulse quickened as the plan unfolded in her mind. The Hypernova device had to be deployed at the perfect moment. The Carvian fleet would be unaware of it until it was too late. They would need to get close enough to launch the device and escape before the blast turned everything to ash. But the Carvians were no fools. Volkar had adapted his fleet to counter humanity's tactical brilliance, and he had developed new, devastating technologies to ensure that no human ship would survive. Ilara knew that this mission had a high chance of failure, and she would need to sacrifice everything to see it through. "Captain," came the voice of Commander Nolan Reyes, Ilara's most trusted officer, his voice tense. "The Carvian fleet is positioning themselves for the final strike. They're going to make their move any minute." Ilara's eyes narrowed as she calculated the risk. "We can't wait any longer. Activate the device. It's now or never." A cold silence fell over the bridge as the crew scrambled to deploy the Hypernova device. Ilara's heart pounded in her chest as she watched the ship's systems begin to power up, the device slowly coming online. The Carvians, still unaware of the threat, continued their approach. Their weapons systems hummed with energy, preparing for the final bombardment. Ilara knew they had to move quickly. The Talon's Fury surged forward, engaging its damaged engines to close the distance between them and the heart of the Carvian fleet. The Carvian ships, massive and heavily armored, began to open fire, their energy weapons streaking through the vacuum of space. The ship rocked as impacts shook the hull, but the Talon's Fury held steady, its shields barely holding. "We're not going to make it, Captain," Nolan said, his voice filled with dread. "They're going to destroy us before we can launch the device." "We don't have a choice," Ilara replied, her voice steady despite the rising danger. "We press on." The tension was unbearable. With each passing second, the Carvian ships closed in. Ilara could feel the weight of history bearing down on her. The lives of billions rested on this moment. She wasn't just fighting for humanity's survival anymore. She was fighting to prove that they were more than just a fleeting species, that they could endure, thrive, and overcome even the darkest of odds. The Talon's Fury reached the Carvian formation, and Ilara issued the order. Launch the device. The ship's core rumbled as the hypernova device was released, a small, bright sphere hurtling toward the heart of the Carvian fleet. For a moment, time seemed to stretch, the weapon moving in slow motion as it made its way toward the center of the Carvian armada. And then, with a deafening roar, the device detonated. The explosion was like nothing Ilara had ever seen. The hypernova device unleashed a brilliant shockwave, a burst of energy that rippled through space, turning Carvian ships to dust in an instant. The energy was so intense that it momentarily warped the fabric of space itself, sending shockwaves that disrupted communications, sensors, and even gravity fields. The Carvian fleet, massive and proud, was obliterated in the blink of an eye. Ships disintegrated, their hulls melting away as the force of the blast tore them apart. Ilara's heart skipped a beat as she saw the Carvian flagship, the Volcars, Wrath, caught in the center of the explosion, its massive structure crumbling under the pressure. Emperor Volcar's flagship vanished in an instant, and the Carvian armada was no more. But the cost of the victory was devastating. The Talon's fury was caught in the shockwave. The ship's systems overloaded, and the crew was thrown into chaos as alarms blared across the bridge. Ilara fought to maintain control, but she could feel the ship losing power. They had won, but at what cost? The lights flickered, and the ship's hull groaned under the strain. Ilara stumbled as the deck tilted, her vision spinning. She had to get the crew to safety. She had to make sure the Talon's fury could survive long enough to report the victory. But the damage was severe. The hypernova device had done its job, but it had nearly torn the ship apart in the process. As the shockwave subsided, Ilara looked. Out of the viewport, her eyes wide in awe. The Carvian fleet, once a fearsome force that threatened to engulf humanity, was gone. The Talon's fury had survived the blast, battered but intact. Humanity had won. Against all odds, they had triumphed. But even in the silence of victory, Ilara knew this was only the beginning. The galaxy had witnessed humanity's strength, but their true test had only just begun. The aftermath of the battle was both a triumph and a reminder of the price that had been paid. The Talon's fury drifted in the silence of the Verdar system, a battered but resolute symbol of humanity's defiance. The once proud fleet of the Carvian Empire was now a graveyard of shattered metal and scorched remnants, floating aimlessly in space. The hypernova device had done its job, annihilating the heart of the invaders' forces, but the toll it had taken on the ship and its crew was immense. Captain Ilara Dax stood on the bridge, staring out at the debris field. Her mind was clouded with exhaustion, the weight of the victory and the losses still sinking in. Humanity had won, but the cost had been high. The crew of the Talon's fury was shaken, many of them nursing injuries from the blast, but they were alive. That alone was a testament to their resilience. "We did it, Captain," Commander Nolan Reyes said quietly, his voice a mix of relief and disbelief. "We're alive." Ilara didn't reply immediately. She had never thought they'd make it this far. The hypernova device was a gamble, a last-ditch effort to turn the tide, and she had known it would take everything. The destruction of the Carvian fleet was a monumental achievement. But at what cost? How many of her fellow soldiers, friends, and loved ones had given their lives to bring about this victory? Her heart ached with the knowledge that this was a war that could never be undone. "We may have won this battle," Ilara said finally, her voice tinged with sorrow. "But the war has changed us, and the galaxy will never be the same." Nolan looked at her, understanding the depth of her words. "Do you think they'll come for us again?" "They will," Ilara said with a quiet certainty. "The Carvians were only the first. There are others out there, watching, waiting. We've proven ourselves, but we've also shown them that humanity can fight back. They'll come, and next time we'll have to be ready." As the Talon's fury limped back to a nearby human stronghold, Ilara turned her thoughts to Earth. The planet, once the cradle of humanity, had fallen to the Carvians, its survivors scattered across the galaxy. What remained of Earth's population was now spread across a handful of distant colonies and space stations, each fighting to rebuild what had been lost. The Carvian invasion had devastated Earth, but it hadn't broken humanity's spirit. They had endured, and now they would rebuild. In the months that followed, the war with the Carvians came to an official end. The remnants of the Carvian Empire, their leadership shattered and their forces decimated, were forced to retreat into the far reaches of the galaxy. Their once mighty fleet, now reduced to a fraction of its former strength, could no longer continue the war. It was a humiliating defeat for the Carvians, and they retreated in disgrace. For humanity, however, the victory was bittersweet. The galaxy was no longer the same. The human race had proven its worth on the galactic stage, but that also meant it had become a target. The Talon's Fury was hailed as a hero's ship, its crew celebrated for their courage and ingenuity. Ilara, though a symbol of humanity's victory, could not escape the ghosts of the lives lost during the war. Her heart remained heavy, knowing that the sacrifices made by her crew and the brave soldiers who had fallen would never be fully honored. The humanity's last stand, the final battle, had secured peace for now, but the questions of what came next loomed large. The galactic powers that once dominated the stars now regarded humanity with a mixture of respect, fear, and curiosity. The next chapter of humanity's journey had begun, one marked by both promise and uncertainty. Ilara stood in the quiet of the ship's command center, her hands clasped behind her back. The victory had been won, but the true challenge lay ahead. Humanity had proven it could survive, but the galaxy was vast, and its dangers were far from over. There would be more wars to fight, more battles to win. But Ilara knew one thing for certain. Humanity would never go down without a fight. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear. Humanity had learned from its past mistakes, and no matter the cost, they would continue to rise. They had faced their darkest hour, and in the end, they had emerged victorious. But as Ilara, Dax looked out at the stars. She knew the road ahead would be long. The galaxy was watching, and humanity's true test was just beginning. A transmission came through the comms, interrupting her thoughts. It was from the High Command. "Ilara," the voice on the other end crackled. "We've received word, a new alliance is forming. The galaxy is shifting, and humanity is at the center of it all." Ilara's gaze hardened as she took in the news. "Understood," she replied, her voice steady. "Prepare the fleet. We'll be ready." As the Talon's Fury set course, for the unknown, Ilara knew that this was not the end. It was the beginning of something greater. The galaxy had underestimated humanity's resilience, and they would never make that mistake again.